Hi, my name is Jose Manuel, and this presentation is about the enhancement of hypertrophy through the use of blood flow restriction training or BFR training. You may already seen the new Thor's movie and the impressive physique of Chris Hemsworth, and if you want to know how he did to get in that shape, keep watching. I'm going to talk about how and why he used blood flow restriction training as part of his training preparation for this Thor Love and Thunder movie. In terms of the overview, I'm going to talk about the general benefits of blood flow restriction, the hypertrophy rationale behind blood flow restriction training, and finally the guidelines and application of blood flow restriction training. The blood flow restriction training mechanism is that the muscle oxygen decreases when the muscle is working or contracting. Then, at rest, the oxygen returns to normal levels or even higher than baseline parameters. However, when doing blood flow restriction, the muscle oxygenation tries to return to baseline, but it never happens. Arteries try to deliver oxygenated blood to the working muscles, but the return of blood is diminished, which caused an extracellular and intracellular fluid imbalance. Until the BFR cuffs are taken off, the muscle oxygenation returns to baseline or normal levels. In regards to the general benefits of blood flow restriction, in this particular study, it was shown that blood flow restriction training preserved both hypertrophy and strength during illness periods, which is important for rehabilitation processes. Other authors have found benefits about the gain of strength. In this particular study, the authors found that an experimental group using blood flow restriction training gained more strength than the control group that did not use the blood flow restriction method. In terms of the elder population, some authors found the increase of vascular endothelial growth factor because of the use of BFR training, and this is important because the vascular endothelial growth factor promotes angiogenesis, which enhances the blood flow in this specific population. Blood flow restriction benefits have been also shown in the cycling context. For example, in this study, the authors applied a blood flow restriction protocol prior to an incremental exercise test, and they found that well-trained cyclists improved VO2 max by 3% and power output by 1.6%. And other authors applied the same protocol and studied to amateur cyclists, and they found opposite results. In terms of the power output characteristic, it has been enhanced in the squat jump pattern as shown by this particular study, and this enhancement was shown 24 hours post the blood flow restriction intervention. Regarding the hypertrophy benefits of blood flow restriction training, they have been shown in both trained subjects and not trained subjects. Moreover, using blood flow restriction while walking also increases muscle mass, as shown by this particular study of Sakamaki of 2011. And another important characteristic of the achieved hypertrophy through BFR training is that it is accomplished without considerable tissue damage. And this is important because this means that the athlete can train in a more frequent manner. The rationale behind the blood flow restriction hypertrophy is about the cell swelling theory proposed in the literature. This tells us that blood flow restriction causes a water flux into the cell that is going to cause cell swelling, and it is sensated by a volume sensor within the cell. This activates the mTOR pathway for protein synthesis. However, when blood flow restriction is coupled with exercise, more water flux goes into the cell, and the response is potentiated by greater cell swelling, and this activates both mTOR pathway and MAPK pathway, the first one for protein synthesis and the second one for gene expression. Based on the previous literature, the BFR guidelines are as follows. The pressure should be around 80 to 150 millimeters of mercury. The sets around 3 to 5 per muscle group. For the repetitions, two common methods are used. In the first one, the athlete performs 30 reps for the first set, and for the second, third, and fourth set, the athlete performs 15 reps. The other method is applying repetitions until muscle failure. In relation to the frequency, BFR can be applied 3 times per week and even 2 to 3 times per day. However, don't let your desire of having got Thunder's body put you in danger. And you should take into account some precautions or some red flags. For instance, in this table, we have some red flags. For example, if you had blood disorder, clotting, or vascular trauma, you are not a candidate for using this type of training. So it is important that you take into account these red flags or characteristics or precautions before applying such training method. The top 3 side effects reported in the literature from using blood flow restriction training are subcutaneous hemorrhage, numbness, and cerebral anemia. Another side effect reported is the discomfort sensation of using the BFR cuffs. However, in this particular study, they have shown that the discomfort sensation decreased over time by the reported lower RP values over the weeks of the intervention. One important characteristic that should be mentioned is that no deaths have been reported from using BFR training. Now for the blood flow restriction application, this particular example is about a non-traditional periodization model, which means volume and intensity are going to fluctuate in a frequent manner, for instance in a weekly or daily basis. This template is 4 sessions of training within a week. On Monday, the athlete will perform a lower body heavy session. On Tuesday, an upper body heavy session. Then for Thursday, the athlete will perform a light session for lower body. And finally, on Friday, an upper body light session. The first 2 training sessions are to accomplish mechanical tension, and the last 2 sessions are to accomplish metabolic stress as a principle for hypertrophy. In these 2 last sessions is where blood flow restriction training is applied. And in the next slide, a specific example of an upper body light session to accomplish metabolic stress using BFR is going to be presented. As said, this session example is about the upper body light session metabolic stress. The objective is to stimulate the pull pattern to develop the lats and biceps muscles. The athlete is going to perform 3 exercises in a row for 3 to 4 sets. The first exercise, or A1, is about 12 reps of pull-ups with or without the assistance of a superband. Pull-ups are selected because it involves shoulder extension and internal rotation to develop the lats muscles. The second exercise, A2, is about doing 15 reps of TRX chin-ups. In this one, it involves not only shoulder extension but also external rotation of the shoulder. So now the focus is on both lats and biceps muscles. And the final exercise, A3, is about doing 20 reps of incline bicep curls. And the incline is selected because it is a great option for full range of motion activation. And now the focus is mainly on the biceps brachii, specifically the long head. When the athlete finishes the 3 exercises, he rests for a 30 seconds interval, and then it repeats until performing the 3 to 4 sets of this different exercise that targets the lats and the biceps muscles. In conclusion, remember that blood flow restriction training preserves and develops muscle and strength in different populations. It is useful during illness periods, which means it can be used for rehabilitation processes. BFR increased VO2 max and power output in the cycling context. The rationale behind BFR is about the cell swelling theory, and when applying this type of training, remember to use it during the light sessions or metabolic stress sessions to accomplish hypertrophy using the recommended guidelines. And finally, remember to take into account the precautions or red flags seen previously to search if you are a candidate for this type of training. Thanks for your attention, and these are the studies used for this presentation.